Hey guys, this is Tolly and welcome to Let's Build a JRPG Part 9. Last time we left off, well, let's switch scenes to show where we left off. We were making pretty good progress. In fact, we've got essentially kind of a core loop set up. We're able to now have the progress bars fill for each of our enemies, or each of our players. Once those players' progress bar fills all the way, then we open up an action bar. We can click on ability. We can then choose a target for that ability. The character then will perform an attack animation. The enemy will take a hit animation, and we're not showing it right now, but technically in the back end, we are dealing damage to the enemies. So if we go into enemy 2, the ghost, and we take a look at, in debug mode, the stats for this enemy, we can see that element number 2 here, which we know is the HP, went down from 100 to 95. So if we just do this again, we can kind of show in another example, this character performing an attack, does the attack animation, this character takes a hit, and then has gone down by another 5 points of damage. And I think on average, we generally do about 2 points of damage every time a character attacks. Hey Super Gamer Rob, let's turn chat on. Welcome to the stream. It looks like I'm gonna have to reopen that, and then is this updating? There we go. Okay, now we have that updating. Looks like we're good on Twitch. We're good there. Okay, cool. I think we're good. So let's continue. So yeah, so we are dealing damage. We kind of have a bit of a loop. The next big steps will be to set up like damage effects on the characters, flying off of, or damage numbers flying off of the enemies, having maybe some basic health bars for debugging at this point so that we can see the health of an enemy dropping, and then potentially setting up so enemies die, and then when all the enemies are dead, we go into a victory state. Those are kind of the next big steps, but I want to take a step back because for the last few streams I've been really pushing and rushing towards, okay, let's get to that loop, let's get to that loop, let's get to that loop, and I've been kind of sprinting. And if we're going to continue to build this thing, I kind of need to take a step back and treat this more as a marathon. There's definitely times to sprint towards something, but I think for this stream we're gonna relax a little bit. We're gonna calm down. We're gonna stop rushing through tons of code because I feel pretty good with the loop we have after like 8 streams. Like, what is that, like 16-ish, 15, 16 hours of work, and we have this up and running, feeling all right. So what are we going to do today then if we're not going to rush through a bunch of code? I want to take a little bit of a look at polishing this thing and seeing like what, like now that we have this attack happening, I'll run this one more time. Now that we have this attack happening, we're going to maybe try and make this moment when the attack happens a little more punchy. So when I click on black magic and I click fire magic and I select the ghost, right now there's just an animation playing here, and then this guy does it on hit animation, but it'd be really nice if there was some sort of particle that was displayed. Particles are a giant pain and they can be really tricky in Unity. I've never really mastered particles, so I figured today we might take a little bit of a look at that. The other thing I'd like to maybe try doing, which I don't know, we'll see how this goes, but you can change on some of these components. If I change this barbarian and I change its layer to terrain, for example, I can then change the lighting of the game for each of these directional lights. I can have it so that their culling mask is everything except terrain. And so now this character is darkened, as well as I guess this bottom piece is also tagged as terrain, is darkened, and I'd like to see if I could set it up so that when we go to perform an attack, only the targets I'm not sure why chat is not fully updating. I'm gonna just leave this here. Not there. That's too far. Let's just do it right there. We're gonna leave chat there and hopefully it will update. But I want to see if I can maybe play with the lighting settings a little bit to make it so that only the character and its targets are highlighted and everything else goes dark during the attack. So we're gonna just play with some of that stuff and see kind of where we can get to. So it's going to be a little bit more slow, a little bit more low key, but I'm going to be playing with more Unity editor stuff, less code, I guess, today. We'll probably still jump into code here and there. So, particles. I've already taken the liberty of grabbing a pretty cheap, not free, but pretty cheap particle pack. Honestly, everything in the free category wasn't really what I was looking for, and there was only like there was only 4 free particle sets. If we come into here, I'm gonna stop running. I think that's why that's running so slow. In fact, you know what? We'll just bring up this information on. One second. I am just trying to get the particle store up and running. Probably should have had this up before we start the stream, but you know, hey, everything's not always going to work out perfect. Unity Asset Store. Unity Asset Store. Okay. So if we take a look here at this particular user, so this set of art I really liked. I looked through a bunch of the like particles that were just on the asset store. So if we go into here and we take a look at particles, or even if we took a more specific look at messing around with all that stuff, I lost a lot of windows and possibly chat. Okay, chat should be back. All right. I took a look at a lot of this stuff. Generally, most of it was like almost too realistic, or just a little bit like just not quite what I was looking for. And again, I'll kind of just show on the pricing side, looking at like the 5 free assets in here. None of them really struck me as like what I was really looking to play with. Like, it's not bad, it's just not exactly what I'm looking for. Meanwhile, over here, I found this pack was kind of the closest to what I was looking for. So the one that I picked up for us to play with today, kind of as a test to see, you know, this user has put a lot of stuff on the asset store. There's a lot of really cool looking things. The one that I'm really interested in is this $50 pack, but I figure I'd start by buying the $7 pack, taking a look at these things in editor, see how they're built, and see if they actually will work with what we're trying to accomplish. So some of these look pretty good. They look pretty solid. Honestly, I hope they work, because looking at, like, if I can get to the point where, where's the video for, not magic circles, AoE spells. If we can get to the point where this is kind of set up in the scene, I would feel, like, pretty good about, like, lightning effects. Like, that's pretty solid. It's pretty good looking. It's pretty quality looking assets. So let's move that to one side and let's take a look at what we got for the Magic Hit one, which was just the $7 version that I purchased before the stream. What's up, Rob? Let's do that. There we go. I did look that one up, Rob. I don't think it fits what I'm trying to do right now. I kind of like the texture packs we ended up with the low poly ground, but I may go back and take another look. All right, so for right now, we can kind of loop through some of these particles. So these things look pretty good. They are 3-dimensional, not just 2D. So that's kind of what we're looking for, considering that most of our other stuff is 3-dimensional as well. Something that worries me in this demo hit scene is the fact that it's got reflection probes, which is probably in there for like, oh god, it's been a long time since I've used reflection probes, but it essentially allows you to set up like you can get pieces of the environment. And so if we look at like this probe mapping and stuff, like you can kind of, it's like building up like a mesh of like the world essentially. And so some of these particles might be using some reflections. I don't want to have to deal with that stuff. It's just, it's a level beyond what I actually want to do. So hopefully I don't need to set that up in our scene in order for these particles to look so good. Let's go back to the game view. So like this, I think could be really good if we cast Cure. Like this could be a good like setup for something like that. This is just interesting, could be used in a couple spots. I think these types of particles could be really good for just melee attacks. So when a character swings their sword, the enemy gets this particle effect played on them. So this is just going to let us go through and kind of, this is just a demo scene that the person who built these set up so that we can kind of play through them. Some sort of water attack. Electric, I would assume. That's kind of a neat effect too. The other thing that we could potentially do is also modify some of these things. Like playing with particles is, it can be a nightmare. So like this thing is actually made up of several different particles. If we were to turn off the bottom ones like so, we could see that that's what this top level is doing, is just that flash. These sparks, I'm guessing, are... Yeah, it's crazy how just adding these different things together creates something that looks really nice. We can change like the probability and stuff. We can also change the count. So if we went up to like 45, this thing would be like more particles. So we can kind of tweak some of this stuff to kind of create more interesting effects that we're looking for. We can also change the color on a lot of these particles. More particles. Doesn't really help sometimes. All right, and then we're back to the beginning. So those all seem cool. Let's try and bring some of those into our existing scene and see what happens. Let's hit play. And then we'll just drag in these particles for now, because I kind of want to just see how they look with the models. Because one of my main concerns with at this point is going to be clipping issues. So when we have these particle effects, I don't know, like I think they were all pretty similar. For right now, we can just grab any of them. I want to see if we drag this onto, say, the enemy ghost, drop that right there per se. How does that see? Like it's inside of its body. Like you can see that the effect of this is kind of like internal, which is not super great. So there's a couple ways we can solve that. Number one, we could reposition it. So we could bring it forward so it's in front of the enemy instead of on the enemy. It's going to be hard to always know exactly how far away from an enemy, because if we had like a large dragon spawning in instead of the ghost, that large dragon, you might need to move it more forward. The other way that we could set this up is we could put this, let's add some new layers, because I'm going to want some new layers anyways. Particle, let's make a particle layer. So we'll say that this thing exists in some sort of particle land. We also need to stop playing in order for this to work. Particle, and then hit 10, add the layer particle to the prefab, apply to all children as well. And then we have right now the main camera. This main camera is what's seeing the environment. We also, I think, have a canvas UI camera as well. This one here is kind of looking at the UI. In the same way that there's two different cameras looking at two different pieces, I'm going to see if maybe we can set it up so this main camera doesn't actually look at everything. Instead, it looks at everything except particles, and this one will look at nothing but particles. These need to have the same settings, which they do. The only difference is this one needs to have a higher depth so that it will render in front of the other one. So this will be the particle camera. And again, so right now today we're mostly just playing with stuff. We're kind of just seeing what happens. So this may not work. This may not be the final way we do this, but I'm just trying stuff. Okay, so now if we have this particle camera and we have the main camera, which doesn't see particles, then we can go back in and hit play, bring particle 10 in, and see how this looks. Now, essentially what this means is that I could move particle 10 to anywhere in the scene, and it will always render on top, because it's essentially two different cameras. So I think the best way to illustrate this is, well, here we can see that the particle isn't playing in this camera preview, but in this camera preview we can see that the particle's playing. This is not refreshing. Let's try a different way. Let's just disable this one. Oh, it's because this one here has clear flags depth only. So solid color. So now that would make it that way. Okay. So depth only is what we want. Okay, there's a number of reasons why, but essentially this is saying that we only update if there's something behind it. I don't know. I don't honestly know how the clear flags on a camera work. I learned rasterization stuff a long time ago and haven't had to look at it really for a long time, but I know that these are the settings we need for this to work. So this is an option. I mean, it kind of has an old school fantasy style, like FF6 style look to it, because of the fact that we're essentially making it so the effect is almost playing on top of the rest of everything else. And again, we could move this particle like into the mountain range and it just doesn't care because it's just rendering. It also went up in height because of the orthographic camera we're using, but it doesn't matter where we put it. It's just always going to be on top. That will kind of create situations where it looks weird because it's maybe should be clipping, but overall this doesn't look bad. We could probably get away with this. So we could make it so every particle that we play plays on the particle character. I guess the issue with this would be in the situations in where if I move this to enemy 1 and then zero out its position so it's in the same spot back here, maybe raise it up slightly, then technically, this is where we're going to run into some issues. This ghost is... oh, jeez. This ghost, even if it's in front of it, the particle is playing over top. So we lose that depth of like, hey, this particle is playing in front of, or is playing specifically on the cactus. You lose a bit of that like look. Because of the fact that the mystery is kind of broken. You break the illusion because obviously this shouldn't be playing over top of the ghost, but it is. That's true, Rob. We could always make sure that we arrange things in such a way that like the enemies aren't overlapping too much so that doesn't become as big of a problem. Let's take a look at another hit effect. What was... I feel like I should maybe write some of these down a little bit. There was one that was green. I think it was hit 3. Let's first change the prefab to be particle and change all its children to be particle layer, and then let's put this on one of our hero characters and let's see how this looks, because this was a much wider effect. It wasn't so localized. And let's stick it on the knight. So this is another example of one that doesn't look as good in particle space because of the fact that we kind of want it to look like it is playing around him, but instead it looks like it's just kind of playing on top. So if we change this back to not being particle, but I guess default. So for something like this, this looks better. Because when we actually get some of those particles being hidden by his body. The scale also isn't bad. I was a little concerned about the size of some of these things, but these particles look like they might just fit at the scale we're at. Well, the nice thing though is that we can have particle 10 be a particle layer and we can have particle 3 be a default layer, and by that logic we should be able to have different types of particles act in different ways. So for particles that we want to play on the center of an enemy because it's going to hit them, we could set those up as particle layers. But things that we want to have like an AoE effect around an enemy that's probably going to play from their feet, and we're not going to get as much worrying about clipping because of the fact that it's coming from the bottom out, then we could leave these as just being in the default world space. So we could probably just make this work by just picking and choosing which particles render in which camera. Okay. These, I'm actually pretty happy with the size of these two. You really don't want to start scaling particles too much. You can, I think, if we render this down. It does kind of scale, but particles, yeah, see, the top part is like the little particles down here is scaling, but some of these pieces are still going out pretty far. Like you'll have a hard time getting particles to scale. Like like literally changing their size without having to go in and distort all of, or sorry, not distort, but change all of these values so that it doesn't look distorted. So that was kind of my biggest concern with using some of these particles, is if they just didn't match our size of our characters, it might actually have been easier to change all of our character sizes to match the size of the particles, because redoing all of these particle parameters to change the shape that it spawns in for that one, as well as this one, and how many emissions it has, and the force over lifetime, and the color over lifetime, and modifying some of these render, it's just a nightmare. It's a nightmare. If we can just take them as stock, maybe modify them here and there, maybe tweak their colors a little bit, we're gonna have a way better time. If we just change this color to red, that only changes one of them. So I guess the question that I have now is, how was the demo scene that we got working? Oh, I didn't hit save, did I? No, I didn't. Okay, 2-second fix. We just want to remake this particle camera, because I think we will probably go with something like this. It's important to save your scenes. So this thing sees nothing but particles, and this thing sees everything but particles. Cool. And they're both depth base, and this one needs to have a depth of 2. I think those were the only actual real changes we needed to the scene. Everything else we were doing was just dragging particles in. All right, now we're going back to demo hit. I want to see how this thing is set up to change the color. A tab for particle design data could be good, although I think that it depends. So for most of the other stuff, Rob, we've set up, we've kind of just went, oh, we're going to make a ghost, and we're going to make ghost green, or I guess we're using ghost blue. We're going to make ghost blue addressable. We're going to give it this name. And then when we go into our design data, which I haven't brought up yet in this stream, game design data, game data. Okay. When we bring things into our game data, we are just naming like, hey, we're bringing in these avatars or these monsters. And we could do the same thing for the particles, where we don't need to have a particle design data. We could just name the particle that we want to bring in. But I do get your point that we may want to actually have, like, for example, we might want this particle to play for multiple different abilities, and we might want to change its color based on which ability is playing, in which case we might want to have a design data tab for the abilities, which just simply says, play this prefab with this color. And then instead of referencing this directly, the ability references the particle, which would come with the design data for the color. Okay, so this thing is currently green and yellow stuff. Let's go to blue. So now this is blue, and this is these are different shades of blue. This isn't even all the same blue. Okay, that means that something magical is happening. And by magical, I mean it's not immediately simple. Is camera holder doing this? The hue texture. How do you work, camera holder? What do you do? What is your magic? Tell me your magic. I believe Visual Studio. I believe. I think for now, though, Rob, we could probably just set it up to directly call the particles, and then if we want to add the color data later, we can do that. But if for the time being it's just calling directly to the particle prefab, that's not the end of the world. So these are how the buttons are appearing. We don't really do GUI dot button stuff that often in Real Editor, but for debug windows like setting up a scene, they can be super helpful for just doing something really quick. This is just changing the counter. Particle system.main, which is coming back with a main module, and then he's modifying the main module's start color, and then indexing to the next particle system. And this particle system is what exactly? Instantiate. So we instantiate the prefab and then instance.get components in children particle system. So this is okay, so this is literally all the particle systems. So he is when we go through this, when we go to next particle, he is populating, well, didn't mean to, okay. He's populating all of the particle systems, which includes this one, as well as all of these ones underneath. He's grabbing all of them. And then he's getting the start color of the main. This is an SVA? I've never... What is as a special struct that he has set up? And then he does RGB to HS. So it gives the base color, and he gets out H, the S, and the V. And then he sets the alpha to the base colors alpha, and then adds that to this list. What is this list even doing? Here on GUI update, he's taking start color and making it equal to the RGB of this. Huh. So this isn't just a straight change color, because he doesn't want, like, if we were to just come in here and change each of these things to all be the same blue, it wouldn't look right. So rather than just being like, oh, we're going to go in and just set all of the colors to dark blue, he's writing some sort of hue shader, something that's tweaking all of the colors to a new color. So it's saying, okay, we're going to make it pink now. That's not just going to make it so that the whole thing is this color of pink. Instead, he's tinting all of them to still maintain their difference between each other while also still being a hue of pink. Huh. I don't work with shaders nearly enough to fully understand what this is doing. But we might be able to just grab this logic and do something similar. So what is this color selector doing? When we drag on the color selector slider, that's picking a hue color. And if that hue color does not equal the start color, then hue color is used as hue plus H times 0. Well, that's just gonna be 0, isn't it? Oh, no, because the times happens first. So this is just hue color. Unless I'm missing something. Yeah. Okay, same page. So we're pretty much agreed that this code does nothing. Great. And then, so he's passing in color.hs. You know what? This is probably... That is just a base Unity function. I'm kind of curious. Again, this is more of a low key stream. I'm just going to take a look at some of this stuff and try and figure out what this does. This creates an RGB color from an HSV input. Okay. Whoa. Unity. Hue saturation value, I guess technically was what I'm looking at, but I was more looking about, could you tell me exactly what that means? But I think that's more just, it's art terminology that probably I should know better. Okay, well, yeah. I mostly use RGB for everything. Rarely do I use hue and saturation. So It's just terminology I'm not familiar with, and I would need to go do more research that probably isn't a simple Google search to figure out what some of that stuff really equates to. Like, how do I convert from, well, I was going to say how do I convert from this to RGB, but that's quite literally what this is doing. This function is taking a hue, a saturation, and a value and turning it into the RGB that I know so well, that Unity uses everywhere else. So we pick a hue color, which is essentially a float. And that float is between 0 and 1. And then we get the saturation, and that saturation is going to be coming from this list, which gets populated when we increment to this prefab. So the base SVA, which seems to be saturation value alpha, is being RGB to, so we take the RGB of the main starting color and we get out the saturation and the value, and then we set the alpha to A, and then we add it. So this is kind of what the base hue, or the base saturation and value of the original color is, and then we shift that hue by 0 to 1, and then we use that to convert it back to an RGB and set all of the particles based off that. So by keeping the same saturation and value of the original colors, we're only shifting the hue, which is making it a different tint of a color, while keeping some of the other like values that we want. Okay, I think I have a broad understanding of how this is working. So this would be an easy thing for us to replicate. So on our, I guess the thing we would need to figure out is hue 0 to 1. Or maybe, Rob, you're right that I should just open Paint. Edit colors, hue. So this should go to 255, right? Okay, apparently it goes to 239. What do I know? But if we have, I guess, max saturation, and then we go down to like 50, that's green. If we go to 75, okay, so there would be a way for me to figure out, like, okay, I want to get, I guess it's here. I want to get a specific color. I don't really want it to be there. I want it to be more like here, because the saturation isn't going to matter. It's more the hue that we're looking for. So I would be able to go, okay, red is 0. And then if we go all the way up to here, this is also red, because I guess it loops. So then we would want to be able to just figure out, like, what is the percentage of this between 0 and 1. And we can figure out that blue is going to be somewhere around the halfway mark. Light blue would be somewhere around the halfway mark. Okay, so I could do some math in here, and I probably can find a better tool so that if I want to say I want to make a red particle, then I could, in the design data, set it to 0. And it's like, I want to make a teal particle, I could set it to 0.5, and then we could populate this into the game and then have the particles be those colors. We'll have to move some of this code from this camera holder script that came with the particles into some sort of particle spawner holder manager thing. But that's all doable. All right. This seems fairly comprehensive. I'm actually pretty happy with the effects that we're getting out of this thing. So again, we can kind of change some of these things. We can have a series of different colors for each of them. We can actually change the colors dynamically too, which could add some really neat effects if we wanted to add some more level of interest to these, but I don't think we need to do that right now. I think them just spawning as their base color is probably good enough. Like, even just having this be the sword I hit, but then depending on if it's an elemental weapon, if it like is like a fire weapon, it looks like this, and if it's maybe more of a electric weapon, it looks like this, and if it's a water-based weapon, it looks like this. Like, that would be pretty cool if we could set it up to do that. That's probably a pretty far away to go, but that's a good point too, Rob. Is chat? Okay, chat seems to be updating okay today now, or it's updating fine now. Yeah, we could just use this thing to determine 0 and 1. You are very correct. We could figure out what this is somewhere. We could get it to print. We could actually get it to display what the number is here. We could just use this tool to figure out what color we want and then go from there. Okay. So I think we've kind of figured out that we like these particles. I won't buy the next pack, on the AoE pack, until we get on hits working first. So then the question is, what do we do from here? What else do we want to do today? I want to play with that lighting thing. I know we just spent a bunch of time playing with the particles, and we could probably get into like setting up some sort of particle spawner and all the design data revolving around that, but I kind of want to just keep playing in Unity, and maybe we'll tackle some of these problems more fully later. We'll bring in particle hits at a different time. I'm happy that they seem to be working. So next, I wanted to try and take a look at that idea of having only the characters who are attacking or being attacked highlighted, and yeah, we can totally do the particles next stream. We can even, I mean, okay, you know what? Let's just do this, Rob. Let's make. I don't even know if this is the right name for this, but let's just do sword hit particle. It'll be on top layer. Let's go into the design data and let's hard code this thing to spawn when we hit a guy. Resolve effect. I really think a particle pool manager is really the best way to set this up, but I just want to see if we can do it this way to begin with. Depends on how fast addressables are. Where do we do addressable loading elsewhere? We do it on the character model, right? I need to take a look at that code on how we actually access addressables again. We do addressable.instantiate async. So if we did just this nonsense, and we don't even necessarily need the onload because we're not actually going to access it after we load it. This thing needs access to the use addressable assets. And then this is a string? Yes. So all we have to do is pass in, well, I've lost my reference. Sword hit particle into here. And then the information for this is going to be this should work. I want to write a bunch more code in order to make this work properly, potentially in the next stream or in future streams, but let's just see if we can get this like we've done all this work to kind of play with particles. Let's at least get it so every time we attack, we play one of them. Oh, I'm just going to get rid of this yelling about the fact that we have 2 audio listeners. which is because under main entities we duplicated this camera, but we didn't remove the other audio listener. Okay, and then if we've done this at least slightly right, when we hit attack on the ghost, particle should play on the on hit. Slight problem, the particle is looping. Let's just turn off looping on the particle. Also, it's spawning on his feet. We probably want to move it up slightly. That's probably something that would likely be useful for the particle design data as well. We're gonna run into a problem here. It's not a big problem. We need to turn off looping on all of these. Really, the parent should decide that whether or not it will loop. I feel like there's probably a setting somewhere we could tweak for that, but for now this will work. So that'll on hit, and then in code right now we'll add the position data up here, but this would be something that would be useful. Actually, I wonder if I can just use a cheat. There's a bunch of predefined vectors. -1, I think we'd want up then. What if we just did that? What if we just added up to this? Okay, I'm also going to quickly just add, because we're thinking about it, so for the particle design data, we would want to have a particle design data sheet. Particles, it would need to have an ID, it would need to have a prefab, it would need to have a color, and it would need to have a position offset. That's the data we've realized so far that we would likely want to have. I'm just going to write that down so that when we go to add the particles, we know or remember all the things that we've just called out. So we perform an attack, we attack the ghost. And that looks pretty good. Attack the Death Knight. Attack the Cactus Man. I'm not, like, not hating it. It's not by any means perfect, but it's better than nothing. Well, it was super easy, Rob, because we didn't set it up correctly. The actual correct way to do this is not this, because of the simple problem that now every single enemy has a bunch of hit effects underneath of it, and we're just spawning more and more, and we're leaking memory over time. Each of these particle effects should probably have a particle manager. So what we would like to do is, instead of instantiating the addressable directly, we would like on load of the random encounter to load any particle effects that are associated with abilities on the enemies and players that have entered. So basically, after we parse in all the abilities in the unit factory, we should probably also set up particle pools for every ability. And then those particle pools would be basically a class that itself instantiates a bunch of these things, and then when we ask to use a particle, that pool just goes, here's one that's not in use, and it would hand one that currently isn't playing over, and then that would get set to the position and the color and the offset and all that stuff that we want. And then once it's done, it would get handed back to the particle manager, and the particle manager pool system would just go, okay, this is inactive, someone else can use it later. Quick explanation, we'll do a full version of that at a later point. Okay, so we got basic particles. Now let's see if we can get lighting working the way I want. So let's take another stab at figuring out how this works. What was this light? Does this light do nothing? This is just a dead light that I I set up at some point. It's quite... Oh, it has 0 intensity, that's why. Yeah, this one was another one I was playing with at some point, but I didn't like how bright it was making everything. I liked it a little bit less bright. Okay, so now let's add another layer, which means stopping. So add a layer. We're going to add another layer, which is going to be the... ability actors? Ability entities layer? I don't know, I'm trying to think of something that makes sense to me. But we'll just go with that. So I want to say, what if we had 2 lightings? We had 2 lighting objects, and this is the ability lighting. And ability lighting, by default, only lights do these things have different call masks? They do. This one doesn't light terrain. Interesting. That is interesting that we made that choice. Let's turn all these lights off. Okay, now if we go into here, is that going to complicate things for me? Well, the fact that this one points up probably doesn't matter. What if we just changed it to everything? Doesn't affect anything. Great. Okay, that's what I want to see, because that's going to make my life a little bit easier if we don't have to have mixed layering on these. Okay, so now this ability... actually, these are all prefab stuff, so we can just apply this. And apparently there's been several things that we've tweaked on this thing that we have not hit apply on. I'm going to just hit apply on all of them. Apply, apply. Apply, apply, and apply, as well as apply. Okay, now because these are prefabs, essentially if I bring another lighting model in, they should be identical. And then we can toggle this one off, and we can toggle this one off, and the game looks the same. All right, cool. So this will be the ability lighting. These things are the same. They are based off of the same prefab, which we want because we want them to be identical in every way. And then we will have it so the only difference here on this one is the fact that it does not target everything. It only targets ability entities. Okay. And then this targets everything except ability entities. And I don't think we care about this guy. Why is the lighting... This is not working the way I hoped it would. I was hoping culling mask meant that it would not... Nothing but ability entities. Nothing but ability... Okay, there we go. I set it up wrong. Okay, so ability entities, everything but ability entities. Now, at this stage, I want to write a super quick script to test this. So this is just a throwaway script. Where can I put a throwaway script? Let's see. Managers, monsters. We're just going to create it at the top level because I don't know where to put it, and this seems like a good place to make sure that I notice it and will delete it in the future. Or maybe we'll end up using this and we'll create a proper folder for it if it works out to be the real thing. Lighting. Controller. And Unity decides it wants to open Visual Studio, even though I'm not ready for it. There we go. So then we add this to the top level of the prefab. We'll apply it to the prefab. Now it's on both. Good. And then this lighting controller will have two things. It will have a public... this thing's going to need to be a little more complicated than I originally thought. Okay, here's what we'll do. We'll do... This will take a bunch of directional lights. There must be a way to access directional lights, right? There's not like a Unity... Unless it's just a light? It's just a light. Okay, so then we have a list of lights. And then on start, we want to create a corresponding list of... I don't like it. I don't like it. We're going to do this instead. We're going to make a public class, which is light data. And light data will be serializable, which means we need to use system, if I remember correctly. And serializable means that this thing can now be accessed from the editor window, or will show up in the editor window. So this will be a m_light. And then this will be a float m original intensity. That's not how you spell that word. Google spelling check for the win. Okay. Now, on start, we want to do get component in children of type light. And we want to populate a list of type light, which is our lights. Cool. Then we want to make a semicolons would be helpful. Lights dot add for each light in lights we will add that light as well as that light's intensity so that we know what the original intensity of that light was. It's because we need to make a new light data object. We could make a constructor. I know this is faster, Rob. Stop typing. We could do this. I feel like I've also spelled the word light wrong. Either that or my mind is going. I now no longer see the word light properly. No, I'm okay. Okay, so then we have this list. I don't like constructors. In Unity, they're not useful, they're not good, don't use constructors. Okay, maybe not, I personally don't like using constructors. Get children. Nope, get components in children. Cannot convert from implicit type array to list. It wants it to be an array. That's fine. We don't actually care about its type that much. It still just works. Okay, so Rob, I don't want to have this conversation, but it's fine. It's fine. So here's the thing, Rob, is technically this shouldn't be a class. This should be a struct. And structs, I like... Okay. I'm not having this conversation. I'm just not. I understand. I get it. I do. But in general, for me... Okay, so we're going to do it this way, because this is the way I'm used to doing it, and it will work. It's fine. This whole script is just meant to be a nonsense thing. It's just nonsense. So we're not concerned. So we take this, and then we are going to take a value, which we will call float total light, and this will be set to 1 by default. And then total light is going to, on update, we are going to, for each light data, it's upset because it doesn't know what lights are, because this should be m_lights, and then this should be light data. And then for the sake of this, we're going to do light data here. Okay, and then light data dot mlight dot intensity will now be equal to total light times light data dot original intensity. So whatever the original intensity we had it at, whether it was 0.4 or 0.6, we're going to times that by a value that we should keep between 0 and 1. And then that will determine how much light each of our things output, while allowing us to fade them up and down from 0 to 1. Okay. Okay, so now if we come into here and we change the lighting down. Oh, interesting, Mr. Ghost. And you guys never got your shaders changed. That's right. We modified some of these guys to not be using their base shader, but instead to be using a different form of their shaders. Materials? These things. Yeah, they're unlit textures, which I guess these guys don't seem as noticeable for whatever reason, but we changed everyone else to be something cactus monster, orange. Your materials were set to mobile diffuse is what we've been using. That way we can actually apply lighting to these enemies. So we'll change this material. Eventually, if this is what we want to do, we'll have to go through every single one and do this. Okay, and then the ghost might be a little more complicated because his shader is probably... Nope, still just unlit. Alright, well, let's see what happens. Mobile diffuse. And then this is the mist, which is using a legacy style shader for particles. I doubt we want to change that. That's probably fine. Okay. Cool. Now, what we want to do from this point is we want to see if we pop the ghost into not being default layer but ability entity layer and change all its children associatively, well, it ceases to exist. Because this camera has some default things, so we need to say that this actually renders that guy. Okay. And then if we go into the characters and we change the characters and we change ability entities and change children, yes, we can get two characters to appear highlighted while everyone else appears darkened. Can we actually do negative intensity? Does that? No. Okay, so we can't make it darker. We can only bring it down to this level. Hey Kazukish, welcome to the stream. Good to see you. It doesn't seem dark enough. At first glance, I don't feel like this is necessarily... Why would that be? Well, that would be based off of basic... I just want to see if I can get it a bit darker. In Unity, Unity basic lighting. There's some real basic stuff here, but I'm really just looking for settings. Lighting settings. Global settings. Window lighting settings. That's what I'm looking for. Window. That doesn't exist anymore. Rendering? Yeah, lighting settings. Okay, we'll drag that over here. Okay, so we have scene settings, which has environment reflections, real-time lighting. And turn on global illumination. There's some other things here. We don't want light mapping, halo strength, fog. Probably don't want fog. Real-time lighting, bake lighting. Okay, we don't have any light maps or anything. We can assign a sun source. Wonder if that has some sort of effect. We could do that as well. We could change the active light to be a bit brighter to make them stand out a little bit more, but I'm not... I feel like there must be a base, like, intensity that the level has, and I guess that's what I'm really looking for here, is what is giving the base level of light. And maybe that is just something I can't modify, but I want to just at least look around. Base intensity. Again, Rob, we're playing with stuff. We're not necessarily trying to find the perfect look, but I won't know whether or not it's bad or good until I've seen a comparison. These are intensity modifiers. Yeah, these are all the same settings, but nothing here is giving me any more... Like, it's giving me more detail, but it's not necessarily giving me what I'm looking for. Making scene darker. Ooh, this seems to be the exact question. I figured out my answer. I changed the ambient light in to be black in the renderer settings. Could have sworn. There we go. Okay. Alright. When you combo it with the particle effect, it's not bad. I think we need to see it in motion. I think we need, like, trying to play with this stuff in real time isn't giving me the effects that I want to see. I want to see if I can maybe start, like, playing with having this effect trigger in real time as part of the ability sequence. Let's see what that looks like. Let's go with... modifying the scripts. So in here, we are looking at modifying the state machines. We want to change it so that I assume this would want to happen as soon as we leave the wait for character UI state. Or wait for ability state. So that's going to be right now the display name state. We might want to have a different state that happens before this, but for the time being, we can do it here. So what's the quickest, easiest way to do this? I think it's going to be to grab the resolve effect logic in here. Right now we have the ability to grab the character model and the monster model based off of some stuff. We're going to want to grab this here and here. We want this logic. We're going to want to put this in display name. Again, we might want to make this a separate state at some point, but we're going to come into here. We're going to get the character model, the prefab, and then we want to set the layers. Is there a way to do the same kind of set layer? Well, that's neat. I haven't seen that before. The ability to toggle between different methods and properties. We want to set the layers based off of... Technically, right now, what we're referencing is the animator. We want to go to the game object dot set layer layer. I want to set layer in children though. That's the thing. I want to like indie set layer recursively. Change game object layer at runtime won't apply to children. It looks like there isn't a function to do it for us. Change layers recursively function. So it takes in a transform. Child.gameObject.layer is equal to layerMask.name. This will do a deep search of the transform hierarchy and change every child in it to... Okay. So that was written in Java, but we want to do something similar. Again, this probably shouldn't live in this state, but we're just trying to quickly prototype some of these lighting ideas and see what this looks like. So the code doesn't need to be perfect. Okay. So we're gonna do public void do layers, change layers recursively. This takes in a transform. Transform. And it's going to need to take in the name that we want to change it to. Okay, fix up some of the tabbing. And then this can't look like this. This is a for each transform child in transform. Wow, I didn't know you could loop through the transforms children with this like this style. Okay, and then I think we just need to set the first layer to this, and then I think we just need to call changed layers recursively now. Transform. We'll probably do that directly this way, and then we just need to have the name, which is going to be what did we call it? Ability entities? Layers. Edit layers. Ability entities. This is the name. Okay. So that should set all of these guys to that. We don't need any of this logic. And then here we don't need the abilities, but we do need this piece of functionality, which is the prefab. And we want to do the same thing. So we want to do for the attacker as well. We want to set the attacker get model. Exact same logic, but for the attacker. So we're going to get the character model from the attacker ID, get the prefab game object dot layer, set it to ability IDs. Yep. All right, this all works. I don't think we need monsters. No, we're not using that here. So we're just looping through the targets for each target, setting them to ability IDs. And then we also want to make sure that when we're done, so in the resolve effect on exit, we want to go back through and we want to set everyone back to default. Yeah, default. Except this guy doesn't have that change recursively function, which is why we're going to need to make that some sort of static, like, extension of some kind somewhere. So we'll just copy and paste it for now. In case this doesn't work, we can always just remove or revert all this code. Yep. So that should make it so that they appear the way we want. Now the next thing is all of that lighting logic that we set up. So we don't actually need to modify the lighting for the base or for the ability lighting, because the ability lighting will only be turned on for objects that are of the type ability entities. So this is going to be lighting nothing most of the time. So we don't really need to adjust this total light. This can stay at 1, but this total light we do need to scale down. And again, the fastest way to get that set up is going to be for the ability state manager to have a reference to it. So we'll reference that light controller class we wrote, light controller, and that will be here. Find references for this. And we'll want to write the same code here so that the states can modify the light controller. And that will be here and here. And this will return a lighting controller. Okay, so that should be fine here. That should be fine there. Now inside of display name, we're going to want to first try on enter light. That's going to just be lighting controller dot total light equals 0. We'll want to add some easing to this, which I'll explain in a moment. And then resolve, we'll want to put it back up to 1. We want to do that before we change layers. Ideally, it should all happen on the same frame, so it shouldn't really matter, but we'll see. Null references, because we actually need to drag the lighting controller in. And as long as we drag the right one in, this might probably work. Attack, ghost. Okay. I mean, that did what we thought it would do. We just need to have it not so drastic. So this is where we're going to get into some easing stuff. So again, with the Liquid Fire blog stuff, it came across, we brought across some stuff for easing. This animation set of components. I haven't used these on stream yet. So let's take a quick look at an example if we can find one. Find all references. This is a death script I wrote a long time ago. This should be a pretty straightforward example. Alright, so under... I guess the lighting controller should be in charge of this. So this thing here needs another function, which will be fade lighting, and then it should probably take in a value. And then, yeah, I think we're gonna want to fade amount. Or to value. So this is the value we want to fade to. And then I'm going to grab this. This is going to be a private variable. Declare that properly. And then we're going to need 2 pieces of functionality. We're going to... Actually, we probably don't need the on complete. Let's try commenting that out for now. I don't think we really care when this fade ends. No, I think we mostly just care about the update. So this thing here, we're going to want to... On fade, we will get the EC's current value. So... when does this EC dot play? Here. So we're going to want to grab... Okay, fade. This can be void. And then we're not changing position, we're going to be changing this value. So I think for this simple example, we just need to do the total light is equal to the fade. All right, okay. So now the way this is working is we have a ease controller, which has a duration of 1.5 seconds. We might want to change this. And an equation which is ease in, ease out. See if we can find a quick photo of that. Ease in, ease out. Easing cheat sheet. So essentially over time, we would want to modify the speed at which the lighting changes. So if it's a linear straight line, which there's not even a version of that, you would just have the light go from 0 to 1 linearly, but I usually like starting at least with ease in, ease out, which means that it starts fading very quickly and then it slows down a bit and then finishes fading very quickly at the end. So you can kind of see, or sorry, the opposite. It starts slow, speeds up, and then slows down again. So it starts a little bit slow into the fade, quickly gets close to the end, and then slows down for the final little bit. So we can kind of start here and see how that looks. So end behavior. I don't remember what end behavior does. Oh, end behavior is determining whether or not it will go back to the beginning. Let's say it's constant, so it won't loop over and over again. So fade value will go from, this current value will go from 0 to 1. In this specific situation, we also want light total to go from 0 to 1. The only thing that I think I want to know is how I could... The to fade is really the question. But I don't think this is actually a to fade. I think this is a whether we fade up or down. So what this is actually going to be is... how do we do? So we want to have a private variable, which will be a float m underscore So essentially, if we want to go up, this value will go from 0 to 1 over the course of this easing controller when we hit play. Do we have to call update on easing controller anywhere? No. So this component is probably updating itself internally. Update. Yes, on update, it is updating things. This thing does have a reverse, which is set play state reversing. Let's just play with this. Let's see maybe if we can get it to do fade lighting down, which would be reverse. And then fade lighting up, which would be forward. So forward, when we hit play, will go from 0 to 1, and reverse will go from 1 to 0. So I think this logic might work. Let's just try it. So if we go into the reverse one first, we don't want to call and set it. We want to fade lighting up, and then in the oh god, we've gone through too many classes. Here we want to fade down. Okay, so now we should have some animation. Didn't end up needing that variable. So now we should be able to perform an attack and see that lighting effect fade up. That did not fade. Oh, that did though. So reverse isn't working. Oh, now it does. Okay. Interesting. So a couple problems I see right off the bat. I'm gonna guess EC current value isn't being set right away. Is this a get only? It's a private set. Yeah, so this is set. We need to call seek to end first. If this is on setup. When we first start this thing, the first time we'll ever use it is we will be fading in reverse. So we need to have this thing when we set it up seek to the end at the very beginning so that it can fade backwards. Otherwise, it's just going to be at 1 and then the reverse state is just going to leave it at 1, so it won't do anything. So that should be what we have to do there. And then okay, and then we should be able to try this, and this should work right off the bat. It does. The one problem is these guys switch states before the fade is over, and ideally, okay, well, first off, that fade needs to be faster. So I think even like a quarter of a second is probably fine. And then if that's the case, we might need to have a fade state for these. What we can do is we can say, this is not great code. I think we really need to set up a state which is for fading up and down. But for now, we can have it that we fade up at 2.5 seconds and then we leave 2.5 seconds after that. Maybe we should start at 5 and leave at 7.5 so that it basically, yeah, let's try these numbers. We're prototyping things. We're just kind of playing with some different effects, trying to see what we can get that's a little bit more polished. I haven't checked on YouTube in a little while. Okay, YouTube's fine. I like how the ghost spawns out of the ground. Okay, attack, ghost. So that's faster. It does look like we broke something though. We wrote an else if when really we just need 2 ifs. And then we probably don't want to be calling this every frame. Yeah, this is why making this a state would be way better. Hacking code that I'll fix off screen after, or maybe next stream. All right, so fade and fade. Fading equals false. This equals false when we enter as well. And then if we're not fading, then we can enter here after half a second, and then we set fading to true. This is bad code, but we're prototyping, testing things, so we're just building. All right. Now this should be working. I feel like 0.25 might be a little fast for the fade, but at the same time we don't want it taking forever. I think the timing of it is really what's bothering me right now. It like fades on the display. Maybe we want to fade after the name. Like, I'm more concerned about just kind of getting some of the sequence timing stuff down. I really kind of want to build a sequence manager. That's what I'd really like to get to. Attack, ghost. Attack, ghost. Attack, Cactus Man. Did that update? I feel like that didn't even update. Oh, wow. That's not where I meant to put that. I meant to put that on exit, not in a function that gets called a whole bunch. Still really happy that I found this, that you can just loop through the children of something by just getting the transform, and then doing a for each on it. I was not aware of that functionality. It's different. I don't know if it's better. Like, so we essentially we show the attack, but we don't really show... Okay. Oh. Shadows freak out a little bit during some of this stuff, I just noticed. Oh. That's potentially a problem. I don't know how I'm going to solve that. So the reason that's happening is that we're switching from a lighting source that's projecting soft shadows onto the terrain. If we just change these things to also affect terrain, well then terrain will be extra light. But do we lose the shadows? We don't, but then of course the terrain is lit. Oh, that's unfortunate. That kind of destroys everything now that I've noticed it. I don't necessarily like it. I don't feel like anything we've done is really kind of hit the vision that I was hoping for with this. So we would need some way of shadows to still be projected onto the terrain while light no longer affects the model. Man, we might need to write some shader work, which I would not want to do. Shader work takes a while. If we don't want the shadows popping on and off, we would need to do something like that though. I think... So right now I thought I could get away with a hack where we're essentially modifying the lighting system in order to try and get the effect I want. But the other route, which is probably, it looks like the better route, would be to... Okay, let me just try changing back here to the fade down happening as soon as we transition. So this is kind of a hacky way of doing it. The better way would be to actually have it so that the shaders on these things are custom, and those shaders decide whether or not to receive light. So that we're fading the entities down rather than fading the lighting down, which will give us way more control over this. So it's less noticeable, the shadow change, when the fade happens right away, but you can still see it on the pop back. So we could write some shaders that are custom for each character, and then those shaders, rather than having two sets of lighting, those shaders would then just fade down their receiving of light if they're not a target during this ability. It would probably look pretty similar though, so we could probably leave it this way for now. I'm not necessarily sold on it. Like, none of this necessarily feels super great. Like, if maybe for when we cast like Lightning Storm or Fire or something. But for like a basic attack right now, it's maybe too much, but I want something like this. I want some way of highlighting this is the character attacking and this is the character being attacked, or multiple. Like, they might all be highlighted if it's some sort of multi-attack. I think it's better than nothing, but I don't think it's still not what I want. It does look better when it's actually in motion, like when it's all fading together. Okay, let's try playing with the darkening a little bit more too. So if we change the ambient down a little bit, that has other effects, but see, I like that more. Like that just, it looks cleaner to me. Like they pop way more. We probably can't go too much darker. Like that's more what I'm looking for, just because of the simple fact that like they become more highlighted. The other option is that we could look at doing some sort of like glow around them. So instead of like having the whole world go dark, we could do some sort of like shading around the character, like some sort of cell shading or something to really make them pop when they're attacking. But I feel like that's not as natural as just like, hey, highlight just these two. Well, it's not perfect, but I think it illustrates a direction. Okay, what if we stayed at this level? I think the question would be, what if we drop the ambient occlusion intensity down slightly? Or the ambient color, so if it wasn't like... Okay, how do I explain this? I think if we had it set up more so like that's the base, but we could go darker for like big events. So when there's like a big attack that's like a huge like fighting moment, we'd want it to go this dark. But the problem is because like I don't know if I can change the ambient occlusion on the fly. I guess that would be the question. That would be the thing, is can we modify ambient occlusion? Ambient occlusion. No, ambient color, Unity scripting. Render settings, ambient occlusion, ambient light. That is a color. Can we modify its intensity via script? Changing ambient color intensity through script. This person just pointed us back to... It's a scene global. The float part refers to the value animation curve at the given time. Try using the following since ambient light uses color. theories, this should set the value. I think they're just suggesting that we make the color darker. Okay, let's play with it. So just for the sake of testing, let's say that when we fade down, we set the ambient color, new color, dot black. Oh wait, that's just a predefined color variant on this. Okay, so then we can do that, and then ambient color. This one's, we want this to be whatever the original color was, so we kind of need to save it. Private color m underscore base color. This EC should have an m underscore in front of it and probably be named better. Alright, and then that needs to be set on start. Okay. Let's see what that does. See what kind of impact this will have. That seems to have done it. Ambient color is 545866. Okay, and then we perform the attack. Again, okay, so we can change the ambient color just at runtime if we want. So if we want it to look super dark, we can. If we want it to look, I guess, any range of colors, we can make that work. So new color 30. Oh, right in here it's not actually 0 to 255, it's 0 to 1, so I don't know, let's try something like that. Okay. And attack, ghost. Sorry, I'm still thinking, I'm noticing the ghost popping again. I'm just curious if maybe there's a way for me to... No, I'm not seeing. Maybe if we could fade the shadows off when we go into that transition, but I think that would involve doing some more magic. Yeah, so if we wanted to have the shadows fade up and down, we would need to have... I think the only solution is going to be shaders. What if we made this color a public value, which is ability ambient color, and that's what we set this to. Then we have a little bit more control to actually edit this in scene while also being able to see it change. Okay, so we can kind of change this now from here to something like that. Attack. Okay. We could also technically make it a different color too, so it doesn't have to be blue. Oh god. No, it was a terrible idea. It needs to be some form of gray. Yeah, I guess we just want to hug this wall, and then we want to just determine how much intensity we want. So it starts around 50. I guess it's not pure though. In the version before, it was technically this was the base color. So it's not hugging the wall. I don't like how much we lose the back shadows. What if it just wasn't as intense? What if we fade down, but the ambient... Well, no, because the ambient isn't what's creating all these nice facets. So I think the real problem here is that we probably want to have... We need more control over what the base value is that we go to is. Or what instead of going between 0 and 1, we want a little bit more control. So we want math F, and we want to lerp, and we want to lerp between A and B by T. So if we go 0 to 1 by current value, then when it's 0, it'll be 0, and when it's 1, it'll be 1. But we don't want it to go to 0. We actually want it to go probably something less, which I think I want to be able to play with live in editor. So we're going to make this a float value, which is min light value, and min light value will go here, and then m total light will get set to whatever the output is from this lerp rather than directly like so. All right. Now we have the ability from the editor to kind of fully control the level of darkness that we have in the scene, while also being able to test it in motion as it fades up and down. So min 0, ambient color black. We're probably going to want to try, let's start with something around the original color, but instead of going all the way down, let's go to here, a quarter of the original lighting. Okay. So we don't go nearly as dark. We keep a little bit more of the facets here. What if we set the ambient color to be a bit darker here? Okay, so now we don't lose all of the really nice texturing that we have on the rocks, but we still get a bit of a darker scene. Okay, next thing would be a little bit more tricky, but potentially worth doing. Instead of doing the fade immediately, we could do, again, a lerp. Can we do, it's a weird one. Can we do a color lerp between two colors? We can. So we want to go from, again, we're going from base color. No, we're going from ambient color to base color over the current value, like so. So now it's not a direct transition into that ambient color. Instead, we're going to fade into that ambient color over time. So that won't, there's a little bit of snapping. It's very subtle right now, but we'll get rid of that little bit of snapping. Okay, so now the ambient color is too dark. So somewhere along the line, we're setting this on fade. Oh, probably because we seek to end at the beginning. Okay, we don't need this either. We can remove this here. We probably want to actually add the on fade after the seek to end. Just a weird order of operations things. That way we don't actually set the ambient color right away. It also makes me think I may have the lerp order backwards. Okay, we'll see. So let's go to somewhere around here. Again, we'll go to 0.25, and then we'll do an attack. Okay, okay. It's better. So basically not flattening out everything by going to a 0 on the light value is kind of helping quite a bit, keeping the scene popping while also still highlighting everything. So maybe we go to here and we go to 0.1 and see how that looks. So what is this going to do? This is going to make the scene flatter. So everything else is going to look worse. So if we went to a half value light, but made the scene much darker. So now everything should stay very poppy. So everything stays fairly well lit while everything gets darker. That feels better. Now, what if we had these guys actually be slightly above normal ambient lighting so that when they go into these like states, they're a little more highlighted? So we would need that to fade up and down as well somehow too. So at that point, we'd probably want to swap them to the layer. When it's their turn to attack, we'd want to switch them to the ability layer. Then we would want to fade up the ability lighting from 1 to 1.5 so that there's not this pop. Because right now when we do this, you can kind of see there's a moment where they pop to be much more well lit. And then they get dark again here at the end. It's actually more noticeable to see them get darker than it does see them get lighter. What if we went to 2 so that they were just brighter? I don't hate that. Like, that way everything still stays lit, but then the characters are popping more. So we would need to get this fading as well. So how about we figure out how we do that? Okay, first off, I kind of like the values this is at. So we're going to swatch this. So we're going to set that down here. It's 22, and 0.5. So we're going to click on this swatch. So it'll go to that value. And then this will be 0. Oh God, what did I just say? 0.5. 0.5. I looked at it in the stream. I caught it before it left. Okay, so then that's there. So then this thing, we actually need to have more than just the min float value. We actually need the max float value as well, because we're going to end up lerping on both of these things now. So this needs to go in here. Okay. Oh God, this logic's going to get hard to keep track of. So for the base version, the one that we've been using up until now, the normal lighting goes between max value of 1 and a min value of 0.5. For this one, we want to go from a min value of 1 to a max value of 1.5. I think. Maybe we want to... I think this might be counterintuitive, but I think we actually want to go the other way. Change ambient color, which is set to determine whether the loop will modify the ambient color, because we only want one of these light settings modifying the ambient color. The other one, we're just going to be worried about the total light it's outputting. Okay, so then cool. This one is outputting this one's modifying the ambient color, and this one is not. Good. Now that's all set up. Now we just need the ability state manager to have another light controller it modifies. So this is going to be the ability light controller. Thank you for the follow. Technic contingent. I'm bad at names. It's gone. It's gone. It's just, thank you. Thank you. It's gone. Okay. I'm sorry I failed at your name. Now we go here and we find references. We want to do the same thing here. Ability light controller. Ability light controller. And then wherever we're doing this, we want to do the same thing for the ability light controller. So we want to lighting controller dot fade up. And we want to do fade down. You know what? I think it might actually be the other way around. I think that's the trick here. No. Okay, we're just going to copy it. If it works, it works. If it doesn't, we'll figure out why. I have a bad feeling that we actually want them to do the inverse of each other. Like while one's fading down, we want the other fading up. But I think because I flipped the max and min values, it actually is going to work okay. I need to hit Control Shift S so it saves all files. Okay. Ooh, what is that? Should not be capturing when... Oh, it's gone. There was some sort of warning of some kind. Alright. Attack. Ghost. Null reference, because we forgot to hook up the new lighting ability. So the ability lighting, sorry. Let's hit play on that. It helps when references are set. It really, really does. Okay. Attack, ghost. That seems to work. So they get brighter as everything gets darker, which helps highlight them quite a bit more. The fade's quite quick right now. We could always play with that, but that seems pretty close to what I'm looking for. I think bringing them up is really there's a couple things. Number one, when we were going to pure darkness at 0 for the min light value, it was causing us to lose all of the shadows on all these little bits. That's super bad. The other half of it is so we wanted everything to get darker, but we're actually making it darker by making the ambient light in the area darker and only reducing the light on everything else a little bit. Meanwhile, we want to make these guys brighter by making the ambient lighting go up, or the ability lighting go up. So the things that are affecting ability entities goes up. Now we want to have the last thing that we still haven't solved, which I don't know if we'll be able to solve without changing some shader logic, is these shadows popping on and off. I do want to take a small thought about that. I want to take a moment here and just think about, like, how would we do this? Because here's the problem. We have these ability light entity, or these ability lights only affecting the ability entities, but it's not affecting the terrain. Let's see what happens if we make it affect the terrain. So the terrain gets too bright, and then the shadows from these guys also gets too bright. We would somehow need... What does it look like if we make the shadows on this one 0, but the shadows on this one 1? So that the shadows disappear from everyone else? I wonder if that's the trick. I wonder if it's the shadow strength value we need to be playing with. So when we... he wondered aloud loudly. The terrain is still lit though. That's the problem. Like, we don't want... We don't want the terrain to have any lighting during this situation, but we want it to receive shadows. That's kind of going to be the constant problem here, is that no matter how we try and... The other option is we just fade shadows up and down. That would probably help it feel less noticeable. Right now, that's kind of what's killing a lot of this, I think. Is the fact that when we do this, there's a pop. But if shadows just faded away, that might feel better. We could at least try it. We could give it a try. So light data. We can do... Right now, shadow intensity is always 1. We can make some real bad code here, and we can just say that for this we do let's write the worst code we possibly can. So we're going to grab the light data, element 0, because we know element 0 will be the first child, which is the one that has shadows. And then lights 0 dot light dot shadow strength is equal to EC dot current value. And EC.current value should be set to the end, which will be 1, and it'll go to 0 when we play it. And then it'll go back to 1 when we reverse. Is this right? Maybe. Only time will tell. Here we go. Moment of truth. We should probably make these progress bars faster. All right. Oh, that seems to have worked. Maybe not. It's a little snappy right now. Okay, so I saw the progress bar moving. So it is fading up and down. It just fades up and down rather quickly. Or more accurately... Oh, I can't modify it now because it's being modified by that script. Okay, let's turn that script off. Slight problems. It kind of 0 to 1. This thing needs to be a lot slower for you to even see the fade, I think. So we would need 2 different... Alright, well, let's continue hacking stuff together. What could possibly go wrong? Alright. It's not so bad when it fades off. But when it fades back, it's pretty noticeable. And it's pretty noticeable when it fades off, too. The shadows could... Well, also, part of the problem is that these guys are still popping. So if we look this particular... If we watch someone else... Yeah, so the other shadows fade fine. It's really that these guys switch from being in a shadow lighting to a non-shadow lighting still. So even though everyone else is fading, their shadows don't fade. The correct answer, the correct answer is still to do shaders. But that's like a few hours, if not days, of me reading a bunch of stuff in order to figure out how to properly write the shaders for this. Maybe it's not even. Maybe it's only a few hours, but still, I feel like we're so close with this hacky, terrible system of doing it. They still pop on and off because they're out of... Because we could fade the shadows down and then switch. Still not ideal. And if we make this guy affect terrain... Oh, hello. duplicate directional light. Directional light exists somewhere in nonsense land. It applies a color of nothing. It has no color, but has a shadow strength. This has no shadow strength. And this has no shadow strength. Now, there is a directional light that creates shadows during the scene, but does not impart any light because its color is black. So now the lighting is exactly the same, the shadows exist here, but when we go to perform an attack, well, the shadows still disappear for a number of reasons. But if we change this from ability entities to everything, and then we go into here and we go to this chunk of code that's currently manually setting the shadow strength of some stuff and junk, and then we hit play, I believe this means that we now have a shadow light that affects... No, it didn't work. Darn it. So close. I thought I was there. If it affects... If it has no darkness, then it does not apply shadow. What if it has alpha? No, that doesn't do anything. I thought I was so smart for like half a second. I thought it would work. Alright. Well... we're kind of stuck on this for now, I think. Unless we just get rid of shadows. But I do think shadows add a fair amount to the game, like making it just feel a little bit more anchored. I mean, maybe we're still onto the thing. Maybe the way we do this is... okay, whatever, just stay there. If this is the thing that provides shadows, and this isn't the thing that provides shadows, and this isn't the thing that provides shadows, maybe it's simply that we need to reduce the intensity of this thing a bit. Maybe it's that we need to take this directional light, give it a color so it's not white, or not, sorry, not black, then maybe reduce its intensity to something like that, but then change the lighting of this to be a little bit lower as well, hopefully keeping something that looks somewhat similar to the original lighting we had. But this is the thing that produces shadows on everything, and it kind of also just base lights the entire game. Let's undo some stuff. Okay, this white light, 0.38. Then reduce the intensity of this to 0 and this to 0. Okay, what if we just did... okay, turn that off. What does it look like? Snipping tool. Okay, that's what that looks like. We're going to use that as comparison in a moment. And then if we turn this thing on and then turn the intensity of this down to 0, so it's just not in play anymore, then we go back to snipping tool. Pretty sure they look pretty similar aside from the shadows. Yeah, okay. Which makes sense. We've basically just deleted this light and moved it out here to be a global light that affects everything. So if we bring this thing down to 0, maybe this is the solution. So basically, the shadow light does not get faded up or down. The shadow light exists independently of the ability fading. So then we perform an attack, Everything is still getting darker. Shadows stay. Okay, okay. So now everything's just a bit more bright because this doesn't fade. But we could make this thing fade. There's no reason that this thing couldn't also be faded by this thing instead. And it had an original 3.8. Wait, is that the actual solution? Is the actual solution that we just have this directional light? I think I got it. We have this thing affect everything. It doesn't ever get turned off. And then this guy doesn't need this light anymore because it basically is still here. And then we're just affecting the other two lights and causing them to get lighter. And then this is still being controlled by the fade. This now is the one in charge of strength of shadows. This thing isn't being used anymore. We can delete it. So that, let's see if this makes sense. So we have lighting. Lighting contains a light that is used by both ability characters and normal characters. So this will always be kind of our base level lighting. But these two lights kind of create a little bit more of the extra like oomph to the scene. And then these two lights are kind of like the exact same duplicate settings, but we fade everything down, but fade these two up so that essentially we keep our shadows, but we highlight two characters. Is that the look we're going for? I think it is. Okay. Cool. I think this is looking pretty good. The only thing we might want to play with is like max light value on like the targets now, because now they don't stand out as much. So going to like a 2 actually makes them pop a little bit more than they did before, because now this light is always on both. I don't know how to better explain it, but making the fade of these guys go a little bit brighter actually kind of helps a little bit. Okay. It's still nowhere near perfect, like it's not in any way like shippable, like you could never ship something that looks like this, but at least it indicates the type of experience that I'm going for, and then we can continue to iterate through it, and as we play through the rest of the game and get everything else up and running, we can kind of always be looking at it and seeing, is there more ways that we could adjust it, or is there things that stand out as we play through it to be like, oh, this feels weird, or that feels weird, or, you know, maybe we'll just today try doing it where we'll play the whole game, but we're only going to go to 1.75 instead of 2 today, just to see how that feels in comparison. You know, or you know what, today I'm going to just try going really bright and we're going to go 2.5. Like now the system's kind of here, it's all modifiable. Like that's clearly too bright. The particle effect is looking good. Okay. Okay. I think we made this look way cleaner. There's still a bit of a question about like when does the fade happen? Like should the fade happen as soon as the text display comes up, or should the fade happen first then the text display? Do we need more states for this whole system? Or is it maybe that the text display comes up first then all the fades happen? Let's try what that looks like. I just want to try that difference again, which was inside of the name display. We fade down on enter, but we could also do a fade down on exit instead to see how that looks. We haven't tried this since we've updated all this logic. Okay. Form an attack. So we say we're attacking, then we fade an attack. I don't know. I don't know if that's better or worse. It's different. It definitely has a different effect to it. It's also funny when we attack the Death Knight because he doesn't pop as much, whether he's lit or not lit, because of his, like, the fact that he's very dark. But we might want to backlight them somehow as well. We still might want some sort of, like, some sort of other effect. Some sort of toon shading, potentially. Or not, sorry, not toon shading, outlining. We might still want some form of outlining, but just for this guy in particular, I guess he still highlights. I think for the time being, I still like... I think I still like it highlighting at this point when the name display comes up rather than after the name display has gone away. It feels a bit more abrupt, whereas when we do it before or on enter of this state, essentially, it feels a little bit more like we are entering into ability, we're showing the name of that ability, and we're attacking. Okay. I think that's probably enough for today. We basically got some particles kind of brought into the engine, kind of played with them a little bit. I think there's more work to be done on them, but at the very least, we've kind of seen that the particles from that specific asset pack will work in our engine. They seem to fit the style okay, I think. Like when this character gets hit with that particle, it kind of matches fairly well. Even the on hit animation is kind of looking pretty solid. So we might pick up some more of these. Maybe not right away. We'll probably try and use at least these for the time being, and then if we're really struggling, we might get more. And then we kind of just played with lighting and trying to do some sort of highlight moment for this attack so that the characters pop a little bit more. Setting up this lighting controller. I might rename this class. I'm not sold on lighting controller, but... and I might rewrite a little bit of this class too. We'll see. But overall, this is... it's closer. It's definitely closer. I don't know if it's perfect, but it's more in line with kind of what I was thinking, and this is feeling a little bit more polished. So now that we've got kind of a weird, like, this was supposed to be like a relaxing stream of like, oh, we're just going to play with particles and play with lighting and see what Unity can do. But now that this stream is out of the way, we'll probably jump into getting the damage numbers up and running in the next one we do, where we actually have these guys hit and then damage flies off. Probably get some simple health bars set up, and then potentially getting some more logic on the abilities. So the idea of setting up an actual cure ability, and that cure ability having a different particle effect, and the fact that you would ideally target your own allies when you cast cure. And potentially even just getting some simple enemy logic where the enemies have a hidden progress behind the scenes, and even if they just attacked a random target of one of the random characters, even if we just rolled the dice between 0 and 1, that would probably be good enough for now. But those would probably be the next steps, and then we should have these guys getting to death-like states. But for now, this is going to be Tolhi signing out. Thanks for watching, guys. Thanks for watching. This will be Tolhi signing out. Later, guys.